Vettel got himself into a little bit of trouble during qualifying at the Brazilian Grand Prix when he was called in for a weight check in the middle of Q2. There were many opinions across social media as to the fairness of the actions of both Vettel and the stewards, but let's break down why the Weighbridge exists, why the weighings are carried out in the manner that they are, and how Vettel got himself under the gaze of the stewards at all. As you probably know, the cars and drivers need to be a minimum weight at all times while on the track through official weekend sessions. There are a number of safety and speed restriction reasons for this. Teams want to make the cars as light as they possibly can, and the more you lower the weight of the car, the more you can accelerate the cars and the faster they will go under the same energy. And here are the equations to prove it. The cars are also much more manoeuvrable and nimble the lighter they are and the more sensitive they are to aerodynamic effect. So, plenty of positive side effects from having a lighter car. So teams will absolutely make their cars as light as they can, right down to the minimum allowed weight. The FIA and their stewards and scrutineers have to keep a close eye on the weight of the cars, and while we're all sure the teams are all perfectly honourable participants in the sport, the FIA's job is to think, how could someone break the rules, and how do we make sure they don't get away with it? The steward's job is to follow the procedures set out by the FIA to check the rules and penalise infringements. The FIA have a mobile weighing platform known as the Weighbridge that the cars are pushed onto. It actually consists of 4 highly sensitive digital scales, one set under each tyre. Together they sum to calculate both the car's total weight and the centre of mass, based on the distribution of weight at each corner of the car. This is almost exactly like a giant Wii Fit balance board if you ever had one of those. The driver can also stand on one of the individual scales if they need to be weighed separately from the car, like after the race when the cars are all parked up in Parc Fermé. Incidentally, the current Weighbridge is a new, more mobile solution brought in recent years. It can sit out in the pit lane instead of inside the scrutineering garage, so the cars can roll on and roll off, which is much quicker than being pushed into the garage and then carefully backed out again. The whole scrutineering bay, including the Weighbridge, is situated right at the beginning of the pit lane. This is important. It means a driver cannot reach their own team's garage before passing scrutineering. If a car is called in for weighing, a red light will show as they enter the pit lane. The driver will be directed to the Weighbridge, at which point the scrutineers, and the scrutineers only, will push the car onto the Weighbridge. They will then weigh the car, and then roll the car free, and only then can the car return to its own garage and team members. This means that the scrutineers can inspect a car as it existed on track. No team member can sneakily chuck a bit of lead or something into the cockpit to bring the weight up before the car hits the scales. Remember, we're always trying to sidestep the ability to cheat, no matter how noble we think the teams actually are. As for procedure, a select number of cars are randomly called in to be weighed at the end of all free practice sessions. There's not any real advantage to running underweight in free practice, so the cars don't tend to be weighed by surprise in the middle of those sessions. And through Q1 and Q2, cars are called in to be weighed at random throughout the session. The way this works is, if a car is on track, there is a chance the computer may pick that car out to be weighed. The team is not informed of this, and the first time the driver knows they've been selected is the red light as they enter the pit lane. This means a driver can't go around collecting rubber or anything like that if they know they're on the way to the Weighbridge. The whole process of being weighed takes about 30 seconds if everyone is on the ball. Multiple drivers can be called in at once, so no one wants any unnecessary delay here. So why are drivers selected at random, and why, in the interests of fairness, is not everyone called in for weighing? Well, it comes down to time. Qualifying sessions are quick. There just isn't the time to call everyone in, as it would cause a massive queue and ruin the flow of the session for a lot of people. Whereas calling in a few people here and there just adds minor inconvenience to a small number of drivers. The drivers are randomly selected, so the threat of the Weighbridge is always there. No one can risk running underweight in case they're called in. The risk is the same for everyone, so everyone bears the Weighbridge in mind when putting their quali strategy together. You can't really just do all your weighing at the end of the session, as the drivers come in and out of their garage throughout the session. So if you were a dastardly cheater, you could run the car light on your first run, come into the pits, add a load of weight, and then do a second run, and then when you get weighed at the end of the session, it would look like you were legal through the whole session. That's why the threat of the Weighbridge at any time is there. It's sometimes unfortunate, but it's the same risk for everyone. Now let's examine exactly what happened to Vettel in Q2 in Brazil. When qualifying began, the threat of rain was thick in the air. There was a pointed anxiety among all participating teams. All cars were sent out very early in a hope to grab a fast lap while the track was still dry. This is known as the banker lap, just getting a lap in on good track conditions at all costs to avoid getting caught out by the rain. Now, like everyone else, Vettel and Raikkonen were out there straight away on the super soft tyres, but they didn't continue on their outlaps to set a fast lap. Instead, Ferrari decided to swap them onto the soft tyres to set up a better strategy for the race, as the top 10 start the race on their Q2 tyre. So Vettel came back into the pits from his outlap, but unfortunately got the red light summoning him to the Weighbridge. With the rain drawing its way across the track, this was extremely frustrating for Vettel. He needed to be out on track. Ferrari's swap to the soft tyres was a risky move and every second counted. He raced over to the Weighbridge so fast that he knocked over the cone on his way. Now it's usual practice, in the interest of safety, for the driver to turn off the engine and allow the scrutineers to push the car onto the scales. But Vettel didn't want to turn off his engine. He wanted to drive up. Every second counted, remember? The scrutineers waited, signalling him to turn off the engine, causing further delay. Vettel, frustrated, nearly ran over a steward despite being signalled to brake, so eager was he to get up on those scales. And this was the first part of his error. The word of the stewards and scrutineers is law. If they ask you to turn your engine off, you do it. There's a reason there's protocol here, and that's mostly for the safety of the track staff. Vettel did turn off his engine eventually once he was already on the scales, as the vibration of the engine would mean they wouldn't be able to get an accurate reading. And after the weight was taken, the scrutineers moved to roll him off the scales, as is protocol. But instead, Vettel restarted his engine, using the power of the electric part of his hybrid power unit, and drove off the scales himself, braking them and putting them out of action. Luckily for Vettel, he did turn his engine off and allow them to get an accurate reading. If he hadn't, he would have been disqualified from qualifying and would have had to start the race from the pit lane. There is a very clear rule for this, with precedent to boot. As it stood, the FIA had to make a judgment call on the weird, dangerous behaviour from Vettel and the fact that he broke scrutineering equipment due to his actions. He got away with a fine and a reprimand. It was a show of disrespect to the track staff, which is normally highly frowned upon. A lot of people say it's unfair to call cars in during changeable conditions, and maybe there is space to discuss that aspect of the rules. However, let's not forget that Ferrari were already on track and they could have set a banker lap instead of coming in. The Weighbridge rules are decades old, and Ferrari were fully capable of factoring in the risk of the Weighbridge into their decision to change strategy and pull their cars back into the pits. The FIA have to treat the rules as they are written when running an event, and the drivers have to respect the staff that run the race and respect the rules and protocols. If you want to change the rules, that can be brought to the table between the races.